Purim is around the corner. I'm sat here with Rabbi Pachter, another of my colleagues in Techelet. And I wanted to talk about how I celebrated Purim in the Diaspora and hear how he celebrates Purim here in Israel. For us, of course, in the Galut, the Purim is a festival which we go to town on. We really do. We have a great time. We make sure that we are so drunk that we don't know the difference between Haman and Mordechai, etc. It's a fun day. Everybody enjoys it very much. But if you look at the story, what is the story? The story is a familiar story to us, and that is that we are under the rule of somebody else. In this particular occasion, it's Achashverosh. And some madman comes along and decides he wants to destroy us for no particular reason, just because he can. And we are threatened with destruction. And of course, we all know the story. Miracles occur. Esther is made queen, and Mordechai saves the king's life. And at the end of the day, we are saved. And what do we find at the end of the Megillah? We find that we celebrate. Why do we celebrate? Because our lives were saved and everything was turned on its head. Instead of us being destroyed, Mordechai becomes Mishneh Lamelech. He becomes second in command to the king. And how wonderful is that? And we have a wonderful day celebrating the fact that we were saved and Mordechai, our boy, becomes second in command. If you're American, he becomes the vice president. If you're in the UK, he becomes, I don't know, foreign secretary or something. Imagine we had a Orthodox Jew in the White House as vice president, or in number 11 Downing Street as the chancellor. We would be very happy. And that's the story for us. And we celebrate that. And for us, it's about being saved from a madman, but we're still under somebody else's rule. At the end of the day, we're still only second in command. How does the Israeli, native-born Israeli, relate to Purim?
Yes, indeed. When we read the Megillah ends with 3 psukim. The last chapter of the Megillah, chapter 10, chapter Yud, gives us 3 psukim, which seem to be not connected to the whole story. Because this last chapter is talking about how Achashverosh, the king, he put taxes on his kingdom, and his story, and the Parashat Gedulat Mordechai, this episode of how he raised Mordechai, Mordechai HaYehudi Mishneh Lamelech Achashverosh. Indeed, when we read the story of the Megillah, we end the Megillah with a pasuk or few psukim that tells us that everything came back to normal. That Amelech Achashverosh puts taxes on all the land, on all his kingdom, and Parashat Gedulat Mordechai. The whole story of Mordechai was a parasha. What is parasha? Episode. Episode means that there is a beginning to this episode and there is an end to this episode. And then you ask yourself, so what will happen in the next chapter of Megillat Esther? What will happen then? Maybe another king will come, maybe another Haman will come, will rise, and then the whole story of Esther and Mordechai will come to its end. That's what will happen. The story of the Megillah ends with such a feeling that maybe everything can change again. And we do not know what will happen then. So I think it reflects the way of how Jews live in the diaspora under Achashverosh, that yes, you can gain success, you can become the vice president of the vice of the king, but what next? What will happen then? We do not know. And for me, as one who was born in Israel, he lives in Israel, it's very interesting to think, what is the next chapter of the Megillah? And my conclusion is that the next chapter of the Megillah is that we need to, in some way, to connect the story of the Megillah to Eretz Israel. In some way. It's not written in the Megillah. But when I celebrate Purim here in Eretz Israel, I need to think, how do I connect the story to Eretz Israel? Because what we read in the Megillah, it's only temporary. It's only temporary. What will happen then? I believe that the only stable thing that we have in our life connects or relates in some way to Eretz Israel. Here we have our kingdom. Here we have our kings, not Mishneh LaMelech, but the king himself. And here what we build here in Eretz Israel, it's not an episode. It's piece of our history. And indeed the Megillah says that the whole story of the Megillah is written al Sefer Divrei Hayamim lemalchei Paras u'Madai. The story of the Megillah is written on the book of their book, the books of the kings of Persia, not our book. And I want to write my story in my book. So this is a question that I need to deal with. How do I connect Purim to Eretz Israel, to the only place in the world where Jews can be the kings, not just Mishneh LaMelech?
I think this is very interesting because for me, when I was in England, it never occurred to me that this was the case. I lived in England in an episode.
Yeah.
I lived in a parasha, which was wonderful. As a kid, I never had real anti-Semitism. But if you look at Jewish history, every place that we've been to, sooner or later, we've been kicked out of. And then we're allowed back in, and then we're kicked out of again. And the best we could possibly hope for was to be Mishneh LaMelech, to be in a place of influence, but not power, place of influence for a parasha, for a period of time. And the question I think that we want to leave you with is that enough? Do we want more than that? Are we satisfied with being Mishneh LaMelech, or can we and should we do more to try and connect ourselves to our history and to be part of the next chapter, an ongoing chapter, not just an episode, but an ongoing chapter of our history? Purim Sameach.
Purim Sameach.